All right, it's time to hit you guys with some freaking truth bombs. All right, because I've been becoming increasingly more out on my own in this particular stance, but I am no longer going to stand out in the cold. I'm going to come into the tavern, right? I'm going to play some dice. I'm going to drink some hearty ale. I'm going to leer at some wenches or whatever you do in a tavern, right? Like I'm not going to stay out in the freezing cold anymore on this because I don't think it's defendable. I don't think it's defendable for me to stay out in the cold anymore. If you hadn't noticed, though, I was definitely watching some Zealand streams, and he's playing Kingdom Come Deliverance on stream. So that's where the terminology is coming from. He's become quite the alchemist, right? I feel like I'm learning my own alchemy just from watching the streams, and so that's an added benefit. But we're going to incorporate some medieval parlance into this just because we've been watching, of course, Zealand, the different person from me, who's streaming Kingdom Come. But this has nothing to do with Kingdom Come Deliverance, although that is a fabulous game. This has to do with Manchester United, an equally ancient operation that is being refreshed by Sir Jimothy Ratcliffe I. Now, what Jim Ratcliffe and the Night Sweats is doing is basically firing everybody in order to try and cut costs. Now, I did defend this. I want to be very clear that I'm not defending it anymore. He's now crossed the line that I believe doesn't make any sense to cross with his cuts. But I did defend this up to a point. I mean, if you are a company that is paying Sir Alex Ferguson a couple million a year to look pretty in a suit in the stands, you're probably making some wrong decisions. Now, I know it wasn't just that. I know he made 200 people redundant. And a lot of those were like the kit man or the people ladling the soup at lunch, right? All of that stuff, right? But, as much as it's funny to make the joke, like, well, that pays Marcus Rashford's wage for 5 hours. They can't just cut Marcus Rashford, right? They loaned him out to try and help out with that. But they can, fire these other people to try to make things economically stable, which is what they're trying to do. And I get that. And it is smart to have an economically stable club. It is. And there are certain people's positions that just because the way it is are more easily replaceable or more easily made redundant because of contract structures or whatever to try and make yourself more economically viable. It sucks and it's awful and it's people losing their job, which I'm never going to root for, right? But at least it makes sense. But the bridge that Jimothy Ratcliffe has crossed now makes absolutely no sense to me because there is now a key difference. They've done this in little minor ways, but this is like a giant public admission of this thing. They have decided to cross the Rubicon, cross the bridge of making their employees' lives worse actively, not just with the imminent threat of firing, which rather hilariously, they apparently held a meeting in September, they fired 250 people in September. They were like, we're done firing people. They just held another meeting where they said there are going to be, according to The Guardian, redundancies of 150 to 200 out of the 900 remaining staff. This means, added with the 250, let's assume the worst because it's Manchester United, that would be 450 people that have been fired from a staff that was 1,100. I mean, we're talking about like a 40% reduction in the overall staff size of the people working at Manchester United. That has to have a huge impact. That is not, however, why I believe that they've crossed the line. I believe they've crossed the line because they're getting rid of lunch. Now, why is this bad? How does this, besides the fact that it is just a shitty move, right? General rule of thumb is you never give people something and then take it away. Right? Once you have to factor that into the initial decision to give them something. Like if there is an employee perk, you don't just give employees parking spaces and then remove them. Because the impact of giving it to them and then removing it is worse than having never given it to them in the first place. Like if you came to me and told me that Manchester United didn't serve lunch to all of its non-player employees, right? If it didn't serve lunch to all of its non-player employees, but most of their Premier League clubs do, I'd be like, wow, classic Manchester United. But now, if you have it and then you remove it, it's worse. Because now we're sitting here talking about it because it's an active decision that you were making. But there is like there's another real logical reason that I'm stuck in on this is because you are no longer just removing members of the staff that you believe to be non-essential according to the way the budget looks, which is an argument that, at least however tenuous it might become when you're firing old tea ladies, right? It is an argument that logically exists. What you are now doing is making life worse even for the employees you believe you should keep. You're making their lives worse at a club that is already notorious for doing so. If you are trying to win hearts and minds, if you are trying to actually change the vibe around the club, then how the hell are you ever going to be able to accomplish that if you're they're not taking away lunch. All right, they're closing off the lunch. Only players receive a free lunch. Non-playing staff will be offered soup and bread. You might as well not give them anything. We're downshifting to soup and bread. I'm sick of that. And I haven't even had it yet. Right? Soup that eats like a meal, right? Unless you're whipping out a bunch of Campbell's chicken noodle soup for lunch every day. Right? And I'm aware of the fact that soup is a wonderful, cheap meal. When I was in college, I would have soup all the time. But I also wasn't working for a Premier League club. And some of these people, right? Like, obviously, some of the staff members that will stay are custodians of various kinds in levels of jobs where maybe if you were doing that at a place that isn't Manchester United, you wouldn't be getting a free lunch. You understand the kind of distinction I'm trying to make. But then there are also people that aren't players, that are doing a job that is high wage, that are doing a job where it is very important. Like, obviously, it's important for all of your employees to love working there, but it's very important for these high wage, desired, right, like highly mobile, highly trained, like industry professionals, whether they be the physiotherapists, whether they be various members of the youth coaching staff, right, that help you develop players that can be worth tens of millions of dollars, right, that can come up into the first team and make a serious impact, like all of those people. If you are one of those people in Brighton, which I'm assuming is serving a 3-course meal to all members of its staff, gives you a call, where do you want to go? The beach, even if it's a cold beach, right? If Manchester, let's say you're not a ride or die Manchester United fan, in Man City, which I'm assuming, in large parts due to potential fraud, I said potential, is paying for big, nice lunches for all of its staff. Where do you want to go? Or to Liverpool, right? If you are not a lifer, a ride or die, and you wouldn't even consider it, this is the sort of slap in the face to the people that are supposed to stay at this club in this plan that would make nobody want to stay there. There is a certain point where your budget cuts cross the line of it's tough, it's a tough business, and we've got to make really tough decisions here to now you're just losing. And this is the sort of decision that makes zero sense to me. Now you're just losing. Even the people you've decided to keep, you are no longer taking care of them in a way that it is reasonably expected to happen in a Premier League club. I mean, a Premier League club with offensive amounts of money throwing around. And you need the custodians. You need the tea ladies. That's what really makes a club. Every documentary that you watch about these clubs, whether it be an All or Nothing on Amazon Prime, whether it be the new one Onside about MLS teams, what those players talk about is that atmosphere at the club. It's the thing that nobody notices when they're just watching matches on Sunday, outside of the fact that the performance on Sunday is really affected by that atmosphere. By the lady that's been at the front desk for 50 years that welcomes everybody and remembers everybody's name. By a happy, merry staff that's hanging up the kits, taking care of the balls, grooming the field, cooking the food. Now there isn't even food to cook. You could train a chimpanzee at the zoo to heat the soup up for them. They'd probably be able to pull it off. Just hand them some treats, like a couple of apples or something. That'd be a really cheap way to make sure that all your food gets cooked. It makes no sense. There is no logical defense left for me other than the fact that they are ignoring the impact that this is going to continue to have. You are already dealing with a very serious, nasty, and deserved PR situation for laying off so many people. There's no way you're going to release that many people from their contracts without it being a shitstorm to begin with. And you are now taking the remaining people that are somehow dodging this, that have survived the stress of you continuously saying that more people are going to get fired all the time, and you're making their life suck even after that because now they're not getting lunch. I'm surprised at the strong opinion that I end up bearing when it comes to lunch at Manchester United. But this one just doesn't make sense to me. I'm at the end of my logical rope trying to give Jim Ratcliffe and these guys the benefit of the doubt. They're just not used to having to deal with other people's opinions, which is not something that billionaires are typically used to. If we're being completely honest, they're not used to having to actually deal with other people's opinions. But this business, the business of football, it is, as much as people boil it down into numbers, an art form to create the right atmosphere and properly be able to run a club that can produce a team that goes out on the field in an economically viable way and plays really fucking well. It is an art form. And you need people on your side in a way you don't need people on your side in other businesses. And it is clear which owners understand that and which owners don't. It is clear. And it is becoming increasingly clear on which side this new shot-calling collection of the Manchester United ownership is on. Because this move, it sucks. And it's really hard to explain why your coaches are having to eat soup and bread or pay for something. Even in Moneyball, even in the movie Moneyball, Brad Pitt's able to negotiate somebody to pay for the freaking vending machines in the locker room as part of a trade. Do that. But don't take away the food from the people that survived the culling. It's crazy, dude.